Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right, got the list. Internationally, I'm trying to think. I guess Russia's made some progress into Ukraine, but the thing is still a slog. We've got the aid package kind of going. There's so but I guess Ukraine has been hurt by the fact that we didn't provide the weaponry and whatever fast enough and all that, but still looks like a slog, right?
Right. They can't make progress with or without it. So they're really not going to move those lines, and no one in the West is willing to make the commitment to give them to what they would need to move the lines. And I'm not sure it would be a good idea at this point because then the Russians would respond and things would escalate. And, now you have a manageable thing with an off ramp. I'm not sure that's what you would have going forward otherwise.
So what about Putin and Xi in China? What is China kind of a wild card in this, in the sense that will they supply things to kind of keep Russia propped up to push forward with this at this point?
Right, and they're buying Russian fuel. They ignored the sanctions, and Russia's economy is much healthier than ours right now. Right, they're growing at about 5% a year. Wages are growing. Inflation is down. They have actually a powerful working economy because they're selling energy to an energy starved world. We're backing out of it. We're not even selling liquefied natural gas anymore. And the Russians are moving in and getting all those customers. And some of the customers, such as China, are huge customers. So, we're losing market share while we're over here placating AOC's, global warming dreams or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things.
And it's costly to be stupid, right? And we're willfully being stupid. And we're out paying $3.60 a gallon at the pump, and the Russians are cashing in.
Yeah, that's part of the problem too. And this is, yeah, and the administration really isn't doing much with regard to this at this point, right?
No, they let some more out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve because prices were spiking. And they're to the point where they don't have enough left in the reserve to really halt price increases, right? So it slowed for about a week or so, but it's going back up now, and it's headed back. Analysts say it could be back to $4 a gallon pretty soon. So, if you're going through a summer, you get to July and people are paying $4 a gallon to drive around the country. Joe's not winning in November. It could be a big wipeout, a big landslide if you have that.
Yeah, not that this makes a huge difference in the state of California yet, because it's so blue. But I saw something the other day, because California's got some very restrictive, regulations about production, and emissions and everything like that. And so that, it really puts a lot of pressure on refineries and whatnot. And haven't really paid that much attention in the past, but, California refineries supply, about half the gas to Arizona. And I think I was saying about 90% of it to Nevada. And so when these costly regulations are in effect, it also pushes the prices up. Californians are, they have traditionally been paying high prices, some of the highest prices in the land,
Yeah.
in the contiguous
West Coast, they're all joined at the hip on this.
Yeah.
Right. They all go down with the ship together. Right. The whole West Coast gas is unbelievably expensive. It's over $4 now.
Yeah. That was the thing. I was always kind of, every time I visit Arizona, I'm like, why is gas so expensive in Arizona? Utah is a little cheaper, not by a huge amount, but it's a little cheaper. But I didn't realize, that California basically dictates what happens in these states.
Right.
I mean, even gas at Costco in Arizona is expensive, but it's still cheaper than most of the other major stations, because they operate on very low margins to begin with. But it's just such a mess. This is Democrats' legacy in California. I mean, this is just horrid. I mean, between this whole push to EVs, which to me is a big bust.
Disaster. Yeah.
Yeah,
A
it's
policy
puts
disaster.
pressure on the energy grid. If you're an EV owner, I mean, you're now competing with artificial intelligence for electricity in a lot of
Right.
cases, right? AI, we've had this ongoing thing for a number of years with server farms to power the internet. I mean, this has been a big thing. I mean, Virginia's got, I think, a lot of server farms, just generating a lot of
They're
capacity.
trying to build a lot. There's some down south, and there's a few of them up here already.
Yeah.
But there, like it's a big controversy in Prince William County. Prince William County wants to put about 27% of its land area in data farms, right? Just big computers, as far as the eye can see. They're not jobs. They're not revenue generators in any way. But I mean, you got to put them somewhere, and that's where they're thinking about putting them. I think that's you putting commuter pressure. The whole thing is to stop sprawl or whatever, limit sprawl. If you take in, if you take a suburb like Prince William County and you make it a big server farm, essentially, then where do the people live? Right? They have to live on the other side of Prince William County now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where things get kind of tricky in a lot of ways. It's just that people, we're used to the internet. We kind of demand the internet be available and readily available.
Fast.
Yeah, it's got to be fast. It's got to be reliable. Down anytime, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, go down for even 5 minutes. It's, people have heart attacks in essence. They just go apoplectic. Like, the world has just ended because I can't connect to my accounts, my social media, your TikTok, your YouTube, whatever it may be. But as you're pointing out, devoting a lot of your available land to these server farms, I mean, they've kind of got to go somewhere. But what's really the answer? I mean, they take up a lot of land. They'll be generating a ton of electricity. They don't really generate jobs because you don't really need that many people to maintain them, which also is, jobs bring other economic benefits, right? I mean, there's people paying taxes,
homes being built,
but they're the people who are working in office buildings, even though that's still at a fairly low level, they still buy food and other consumables and things like that. They provide a tax base.
Right.
There's got to be a limited tax base when you're just a server farm. I mean, right. And so how much of that do you go for? And then and if you do that, as you've said, where do the people go to live? So it gets to be really tricky. But all this push, the push to EVs only, I think, adds to the strain. I mean, we've already seen in the last few years, as we've discussed before, the strain on the electrical grid that we had before. And, a lot of this was internet driven, and just a lot of things where the grid itself is old. It hasn't been able to build capacity, and this push towards green energy, has forced, coal plants to shut down, nuclear plants to shut down, natural gas, all this as they move to renewables. Renewables cannot generate the electricity that is needed to power this country, especially now. If you're piling AI,
nowhere close. People need to understand what you're saying, right? It's not, they're 89% of it. No, they're about, you could max it out, and if the wind was blowing and the sun was shining, you get to about 15 or 20%. Right? It's not close to being able to meet the energy needs.
Yeah, so you're taking the internet, which is already a energy hungry,
energy eater. Yeah,
it just devours energy. Then you're now taking AI, which needs even more energy as it runs on top of that to get your back your query results. And everybody's jumped into AI, right? Google has jumped in there. Microsoft has jumped in there. They've worked all these. If they haven't developed their own AI, they have partnered with Chat GPT and Open AI and things like that to create artificial intelligence formulas, type of things going on there. So, and I'm not against AI in general. I mean, I think, I've heard enough stories right now, and I don't use it, where there's some benefits to it. I mean, I think it can benefit me for the few things that I do for AIA, like rather than try to find a picture for a story that may be copyrighted but doesn't look so on Google or whatever, or do this stuff, is ask, is asked to get an AI generated picture of something similar, like a campus protest. That should not be hard. And then you label it as generated by whatever. So you just kind of make sure that nobody can accuse you of violating anybody's copyright, and not get into any likeness issues or whatever. And then I think you do okay. But it just create we're just living in this world where electricity is getting at a super high demand, which also became interesting to me, because another thing that's been happening lately is that in the stock market, electric utilities, which have generally not been very good performers over the last decade or two, they used to be kind of steady Eddie, kind of like with the with the AT&Ts, the telephones. They would they were fairly reliable cash cows. They would chart, they would pay out good dividends to their shareholders. Pacific Gas and Electric ran into a lot of problems with fires. They got sued a lot and they went bankrupt, and they've reformulated, and they're still having trouble with keeping their transmission lines in the fires and the wildfire issue and stuff like that. But it's lately electric utilities, the stocks have been going up, bucking all trends, and it's all tied apparently to AI, because virtually everybody who runs these utilities has said publicly that they see years of earnings growth because of AI demand, not EV demand, AI demand. But I think you can take all of that in and put it into one ball and say, yeah, all of these things together means that there is going to be more demand for electricity, and I don't know that we can meet that demand.
We're not close to being able to meet that demand.
Right. So, I mean, where does it hit?
Right. And we're cutting our available, our solutions, right? We don't want liquefied natural gas. We don't want nuclear. We don't want this, and we don't want that, because AOC says it's a bad idea, right? We don't really need oil and gas, right? We need the wind. But yeah, we're not close to. I mean, we're we could be 40 or 50% underwater in 10 years. It's that bad, and people don't understand it, and they keep putting stuff on it, and they keep wanting to limit how you can get the energy. So it's like something's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, I see, like, in California, which already had, brownouts or and the rolling blackout kind of thing like this. I mean, that could easily become, a very regular, exercise, particularly during the summer months when, electricity.
It's going to hit you when you need when it hurts the worst.
Right. I mean, and there's ramifications there too for people who rely on, air conditioning and oxygen and all these other kinds of things where they
food
need
spoiling,
Yeah, all of these things. So the left really has kind of, they've done such a disservice to this country, with this big push. The Biden administration, has handed over their energy policy to the left, and that's why we have it's part of the reasons we have this mess, to begin with. And I don't blame Joe Manchin for leaving the Senate either too. It's like, I think besides the politics of just how things have kind of disintegrated, within Congress and the Senate, I think just fighting against the left-wing forces that are out there right now on energy policy, I think he just felt that he was one of just a handful of people that were really fighting back. And he was trying to protect the coal interests in West Virginia. And yet, if we have plentiful resources in some areas, we should use them. We've come a long way. Coal is not nearly as dirty as it used to be. They have come. There's so many regulations on so many of these things. It costs a lot. It costs those manufacturing, those people, a lot more money to produce, and take care of, go ahead and use the coal plants and things like that than it did 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? I mean,
That's right.
It's a very different ball game than it was. But it still seems that, the leftists, when it comes to stuff like that, they still think about the 1940s or 1950s, 60s
Well, they
era.
play on you not understanding. It's a common tactic. They, a lot of what the left does, they count on you not looking it up, right? Because if you look it up, you're going to find out that they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and then there was this editorial today in the Wall Street Journal on Exxon. So we're still kind of in the shareholder, voting season, proxy season, and normally what happens is that when shareholders submit a proposal to a corporation, the corporations can look at that, and for certain business purposes and things like that, they can reasonably not, just say, they can say, no, we're not going to allow this to be put into the proxy material. My father spent decades really throwing up a lot of proxy, make me a lot of shareholder proposals that continually got knocked down. But he was always undeterred. But his were, at least his were reasonable. He was trying to hold them to account. The leftists are trying to destroy businesses in many respects.
Right.
And in this case, this one was interesting because a couple of left-wing organizations, had made this proposal about the combustion effect of gas, in essence, of the products that Exxon produces. And Exxon's like, this is a business thing, and they wanted to reject it. But of course, we have Gary Gensler at the SEC, and the SEC basically did not, they ruled with the left wingers on this, right? So this proposal will apparently go, it's going to be in the proxy material. And Exxon has said, in essence, and plus the fact that they want to vote out, I think the Exxon's legal counsel, who basically looks at this kind of stuff, and then, the CEO and things like that, Exxon has said, if this proposal passes on this he says it could easily put us out of business because it, relates to the core product of what they produce. And yeah, you try to put an oil company out of business. It's like, exactly how does that benefit anybody? It's, once again, this is AOC and the left-wing mentality of just let's take down these big corporations because they think that they're evil, but maybe you don't like big oil, but hey, guess what?
You need it.
Most of us still
no
need
choice. The nutbaggery, they never face the consequences of their choices, right? They talked about removing all energy, right? Biden said on the campaign trail, he said during one of the debates with Bernie Sanders, it's like, I want to take all oil and gas production out of the United States. All of it. No more oil and gas production in the entire country, right? No more. He said, we take it out. We work it out, right? That's what he said. Those were his exact words. And so, think about if we really didn't have oil and gas, or we really shut it off, right? You'd have a Great Depression, and you would have, most of the country in the dark, right? These people want, the implications of what they want is basically the Stone Age. In an internal war that they would not stop and could not control, right? Because people would demand that the power be turned back on, and there's a lot of things in society now that they're kind of coming close to that, to where what the left wants is so radical and so unworkable that we just got to not do it. We just got to tell them no this time. So, and I think this is coming into that frame because the people do not, you have to have the energy. No one's throwing their cell phone in the pile, right? All these people with all these solutions for all this stuff, no one does anything with the cell phone.
So,
I'm keeping my cell phone. You go
oh yeah.
solve this problem with me keeping my cell phone, right? And as long as you're going to try to do it that way, then our solution to that problem has to prevail. There is no ifs and buts about it.
So I want to know, has anybody tried to snoop on these people, all these left-wing, guys, and find out what kind of vehicles they are driving?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I see that stuff all the time. And they're complete hypocrites about it, right? For
yeah,
thee, but not for me.
yeah,
As long as they're computing, as long as they're the ones using phones and they're the ones using AI, they have no argument because they're the problem.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing, as you said, hypocrite. I mean, if you guys are out there bashing, fossil fuels, but you're still using fossil fuels, and you have not gone to
Right.
you have not
You're
gone
not
to
living your dream there. You're not
yeah.
doing
Yeah, no, because they too have range anxiety, but will never admit it. That that getting an EV would limit their ability to make certain trips and whatnot, or or they would have to if they were traveling maybe from one end of their district to the other, or one end of the state to the other. That means multiple stops potentially for recharging, and that takes a lot of time. Uh, yeah, those are I go back to the old Al Gore. I mean, these are these inconvenient truths, right? In this sense, is that you know I would drive if I need another new car. I mean, I would consider a hybrid, but that was about as far as I probably really would go, only because I don't think that there's enough out there on the for the EV side to make me comfortable to do this. And it's I think I don't drive enough, and it would cost me more to drive an EV based on the cost of the vehicle than it would to buy and operate a fossil fuel car.
right.
And so it's I think my son's got a Tesla, a used Tesla, but he's got a decent commute, but he's got his figured. He just charges his thing at home at night. He's got solar panels
Right. As
and
long as he goes to and fro work, he's probably okay.
yeah,
Right. But like occasionally people want to go other places.
right. So he's fine, but we go back to Hertz, right? Hertz thought they hit the jackpot. They had that great idea where they'd lined up. They bought all those Teslas for their rental fleet, but they were too expensive for people to rent and too expensive for Hertz to maintain in the fleet. I mean, not
That's
just
right.
charging them up, but when a Tesla, when an EV like that gets in a wreck, it's expensive. Those parts are expensive,
Yeah.
and it takes months. It can take 6 months to get a vehicle
Right.
repaired or work.
And
And
plus,
so,
that's one of the things is like, the gas engines, Hertz can fix them
yeah,
themselves, right? You really can't fix this, right? You got to take it back where it came from.
right,
And so
right.
you're at the mercy of Tesla's, retail price on repair,
Yeah, that's the thing and we've got several different manufacturers out there, but if those vehicles go down, you basically have to go to a very specialized place to get it
Right.
fixed. And it's not going to be a few days turnaround in most cases. It could take months. And in the meantime, you're out that vehicle and out the
Right.
potential revenue from that vehicle and
Right.
everything.
Yeah. It
So,
doesn't make sense. It was bad. That was a bad idea. You can see that one coming from a long way off.
so yeah, there's a lot yet to be seen on all of this, but I think it's interesting to see where we are now and how much of this is going on. And I mean, even the solar companies in this country, they've been taking a hit. I mean, I didn't think about this, but solar. My son works for a solar company, and he's probably secure for a while. But he was saying when we were with him last month, earlier this month, that one of the things that's hurt their business is our interest rates. When the interest rates shot up, what happened is that for people that they were selling solar panels to, the cost benefit analysis went out the window. If when interest rates were, say, 2, 3, 4%, they could go to a customer and and tell them that based on the interest rate, you borrow to buy, the solar panels and all these kind of things. Then with the tax credits and things like this is going to cost you this amount of money per kilowatt hour versus what you're paying now. But when interest rates basically have doubled, they lost their edge. And
Yeah.
so they are now, I think his company laid off 30% or more of their employees because they just didn't have enough business. And they moved into a new $11 million building recently, not seeing that, how much this thing was hurting them.
Right.
I have another friend of mine.
They assumed that government would subsidize everyone past the introductory phase, and government's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I ran into
too big.
Yeah, I ran into a friend of mine at the airport, and his son worked for a solar company that was bought by another bigger solar company, but that company is having trouble. And so he said his son is hoping that maybe they would spin that off or whatever, because he says his division is doing okay. But, sometimes when you're caught up in the bigger pot, it's harder to separate that out, or the owners may not want to do that. But yeah, solar's having a little bit of a bumpy ride here, which also means that Tesla's there's a little bit of a soft spot in Tesla because, they took over their own, solar company. They basically bought it out, kind of a interesting thing that they did. I always thought that was kind of insider dealing there, where Elon didn't like the criticism he was getting, for the solar company. So he went ahead and decided, we'll just offer the shareholders this amount of money. Nobody will complain, and we'll wrap it in. And now we'll call that Tesla. We'll make that part of Tesla, and nobody will be able to, in essence, single us out on our solar earnings only. That's Elon being Elon, because he just kind of goes on to the next thing, right? He gets his space, thing. He has his Starlink satellites and stuff, all these kinds of things that he's doing. Anyway, all right. So we had the Iranian president die in a helicopter crash, and so there was some, and I think
Biden sent him condolences. We're sorry for your loss of this monster who killed hundreds of thousands of people. We grieve with your family. Like, no, we don't. What are you doing? Who does that?
Yeah. Right? This administration does that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the, the incongruency, this complete nonsense that they do, because they're just so in bed with Iran, right? They're so beholden to Iran. No courage to stand up to Iran ever on anything. Right? They don't want Israel to finish the Iranian-backed people who attacked them. Right? I mean, that was an Iranian paid-for operation, trained, planned operation, and let's honor their leader when he dies. Right? Let's send condolences for that. It's no, for one thing, why is Joe condolencing this guy? He's helping cost Joe the election. Right? The protests look so bad. The Jews are mad at him. You have people like Michael Rappaport, who despises Trump. And he's like, I'm not all the way there to vote for Trump yet, but I'm not voting for Biden. It's that's people are breaking apart from this because it makes so little sense. Another thing, and then yesterday, I guess you saw this. So when they searched Mar-a-Lago, they told the FBI, you prepare for a shooting. You're authorized to draw down and shoot whoever you need to shoot. Right? They were trying to pick a fight with the Secret Service people there, get shooting going, and then blame Trump. Right? That's seriously. If you go read this, I'm serious. Did you see this?
I did see. I saw a headline about this.
It's nuts. These guys are nuts. They tried to start a shooting fight at Mar-a-Lago, a shootout at Mar-a-Lago, to make a political point. I mean, they got to go. People got to go to jail for this. We're not messing around anymore.
Yeah, I get exasperated at what happens with this administration and everything. It's just unbelievably kind of is this really our America? What is going on here in the last few years for so many different reasons? But on Iran, we get, there's a monster that died, and these things happen. from time to time, that they either die in accidents or they get taken out by some other force or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really, it's not really going to change the political mix, because Iran is still going to do what they're going to do, and the power really lies with with other people in Iran anyways. They had more power than Razi did, but still, it's kind of interesting to see how this is all shaping up here. And I don't know. I mean, we talked about this last week, about I was mentioning about these campus protests, which I guess you've kind of alluded to a little bit here, is that they're going to wind down because graduations ceremonies are almost over. I mean, I think maybe some more in California or whatever. California tends to go a little bit later than others, but May June, and they'll be mostly done with, and students, the encampments and whatnot will be mostly gone, because a lot of students live on campus and they go to school. So what are they going to do? It's the outsiders could hang around, I guess, but you know there were about 80 of them at the peak, apparently, at the beginning of May, and they were down to 40 as of about a week or so ago, and they'll probably continue to dwindle down. But the various colleges, universities have taken different tacks on how to deal with them, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Columbia University, I mean, the president there, Manoush Shafiq, she called in the New York City police to go and arrest people, but it didn't stop the students from overtaking Hamilton Hall, renaming it, Heinz Hall. They haven't had that many arrests since the Vietnam War days. I mean, it was very reminiscent of the Vietnam War days, because the thing is that I don't know. I kind of felt like Columbia's president, all she was really doing was kind of trying to provide some cover for herself after Harvard's president and UPenn's president resigned after not really doing anything before about protests after the war broke out, and that she's trying to look like, I'm tough, right? I cracked down. I've allowed the police to come in there, arrest people and whatnot. So things are going on. It's like, well, if you'd really, you could have really stopped this. There is no excuse for allowing students to go in and barricade and take over a building. To me, it's like, that's
Right.
ridiculous. That's
Right.
absolutely ridiculous.
That's right. The building's got to be used by others. Also, the nature of the protests themselves. It's like, you can protest, but you're talking about not letting people go to class and beating people up on the campus. That's got to be stepped in on, right? That's, you're free to yell out whatever you want, but when you start hurting people, then they get the right to take care of you, right? So, none of that happened, right? The cowardice of the administrators of and one of the things that's remarkably, that's happened to a remarkable degree in the last 5 years, is that the value of an Ivy education has fallen off the map, right? It's like, it's not a thing anymore. It's not necessarily, it may even be a detriment on your resume in some cases now, just because of the way that these schools have devolved into PC hate farms, no thought challenged, and it's all affirmation instead of confrontation, and so you tell people that you don't resist bad ideas, right? Bad ideas keep growing in steam because they're not encountering the normal resistance, because PC and whatnot has said you're not allowed to respond, right? You have to let the bad idea go unchecked. So now you have bad ideas that they can't control, and that's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the people that was arrested at Columbia was was it Ilhan Omar's daughter, because she was at Barnard College, part of the Columbia, and for that, but they also have that, they had lots of outsiders. That's why they had kind of locked down the campus and trying to prevent outsiders from coming in. Harvard, put some students that they could identify on involuntary leaves of absence, right? And I was like, what the heck is that? Right?
Well, you're suspended, and that's your parents aren't happy about it.
Right. So the current president, uh, he had said on multiple occasions that, we're not negotiating with these people, right, and that were doing protesting on the campus, and yet in the end, he negotiated his way to a settlement that, that even though the other side, the pro-Palestinian side, the pro-Hamas side, said that they were not necessarily satisfied, it's definitely a victory for the left wingers, because they're getting a couple of things out of this for sure. They're going to get a meeting with this board of trustees or whatever to talk about divestment, right? This is one of the underlying things that's happened with these
Yeah.
protests, is that, first it was all supposed to be about, oh well, Gaza, innocent civilians killed in Gaza, Israeli atrocities, all this nonsense. But then to me, it revived that whole boycott, divest, sanction movement that had kind of, just kind of died down, kind of like how BLM had died down. It just basically revived that, because they're like, oh, wait a minute, the left wing say we can try to lever this whole thing and talk to the universities and see if we demand that they
make that one of
divest.
our demands.
Yeah. And so they're gonna get a chance to present their case. Now, that doesn't mean that these boards are going to go with them or anything like that, but there'll be a little bit of pressure there. And then the students who were put on involuntary leaves of absence, they're going to be restored, right? They're going to basically be unsuspended, and then there may be some penalties for some other students, and other things like this. But to me, on the surface, it looks like the Harvard president says, we want this to go away, so we'll pretty much give you most of what you ask for, but we'll try not to make it look too bad for us or something. But I look at that as another cave-in by this.
Yeah. Why would you cave? They have no leverage. Kick them out of school.
Yeah. So John Fetterman, Connor, let's keep ramping up your campaign. Mitt Romney for next Harvard president. Somebody get in there, and the Ivy League schools have got problems, right? I mean, I think we mentioned Cornell's president resigned in the midst of all this. She probably is just like, I'm not going down with that ship. I'm leaving before before too much of this gets pinned on me, and stuff like that. I mean, the Ivy League, some of the more prominent schools, they're in turmoil.
Yeah, they're in huge turmoil. They don't know where they're going to get customers, right? They got a customer problem now.
Yeah, this is just because what is the value of an Ivy League education? And you cannot guarantee now the safety of your students. A lot of them rely on Jewish students. They're some of the core and the backbone of that, and they're out there. And then you get that, as we talked last week too. I know that Bob got into this at the time. It was just about professors that had been joining in on some of this stuff, which is just ridiculous. Look, you're allowed to have free speech. I think you're right. You can have free speech, but it needs to be peaceful. You cannot be harming people, and the students have every right to feel that they're going to be safe. And the timing of this too is that as students are getting into final exams and preparing for graduation and whatnot, all of this stuff happens. If that is not disruptive to what is going on for them, that also mars that. I mean, graduations. I think
so. My daughter pointed this out. The people who graduated from college this year, their high school graduations were messed up by COVID.
Exactly.
They held it off.
Yeah.
So it's like graduation is just going to be a trauma for you for your entire life.
Yeah.
Right. Every time you came up to graduate, the world blew up. Right. And you weren't able to do it. So, I mean, they're out of school. They have their diplomas. It's, but like the idea of that fun day of getting your diploma and celebrating with your parents and all that, it's been robbed by angry nihilist leftists.
Right. As I was writing about this for the Campus Report, trying to put this thing together, one of the things I was mentioning was just that, and just basically really how, two, really very important dates, times in a young person's life, can be high school graduation, college graduation, right? These can be big celebratory events because in a lot of cases, if you graduate from high school, there's not a lot of students go to college, or not a lot, and some students don't ever actually graduate from college. And then the college kids, that may be the last big thing they do for a number of years. So that you get the family together. It's a big deal. I mean, this is a big celebratory event, those kind of graduation ceremonies. and they've taken away, COVID and all that nonsense, and just, we know what's happened there, and how they were robbed there. But now you have, like you said, these nihilist leftists have stolen this grand moment
Right.
from a lot of these kids, and that's a real tragedy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, I think you can maybe get over the high school graduation, but the the other thing about the college graduation is that you've spent money on this.
That's right. That's
Some of
right.
these people have spent big money on
Big
this,
money. Their
and
parents are sitting there watching that girl. I could just think that girl in Columbia tore up the diploma and all that.
oh yeah,
It's like, you feel real good about yourself. You made a scene. Everybody saw your scene. Your dad's up there, man, that's $150,000-$200,000. So you could tear that thing up on the stage. Like, are you serious? But and the other thing is like, I really believe this is going to have professional ramifications for a lot of these people, right? They've stuck their necks out, and it must be remembered, what are they supporting, right? They're supporting terrorists who went into Israel on October 6th, killed, raped, in the most grotesque means possible, innocent civilians, right? For no other reason than to terrorize them, right? There was no policy goal of that. It was just to inflict terror, to show Israel that it wasn't as secure as it thought it was, right? So Israel is addressing that now. Now they've moved into Rafah, and they're going to finish off what's left of Hamas, and our feckless leaders here in the U.S. are trying to stop them from doing it. And they get back on the track to the two, they're now accusing Netanyahu of he doesn't have a plan for after the war. It's like, well, first of all, not defeat these guys, right? That's objective one for Israel. Don't have them doing it anymore, right? And now Israel attacked, I guess, in the north last night. Hezbollah. So, Iran's not stopping. They're still provoking this. It's not like, October 7th happened and everything since then has been retaliation for October 7th. They're still attacking, right? Israel is still being attacked. And so, the idea that they should not fight, or they're wrong to fight or whatever is nonsense, right? They got to wipe this out down to the bone so that it does not come back. And I don't think most of the Arab world is going to be one bit upset about that.
This is not what the military would call a cleanup operation, right? This is still an ongoing battle.
Yeah, this is ongoing. This is wipe them out.
Yeah, so this is part of the problem. Now, we also had this request, I guess that's what they're called, by the International Criminal Court for Netanyahu. The defense secretary got through for arrest warrants and things like. It's like, okay, what is the deal with the International Criminal Court? I mean, are these guys just a bunch of clowns, or what the heck is it?
We're not a member. They're not a member.
Yeah,
Israel's not a member. We're not a member. I don't care what they say. They arrest nobody, right? They have no jurisdiction. You can't allow them to, or you can't allow them to. They want to arrest them both. They're saying, oh, we'll lock up the Hamas guy too. Like, no, you won't. A, you wouldn't. B, if you did, you wouldn't do it for long. And C, you're not a sovereign. You don't have arrest powers, right? You don't have criminal prosecution. You don't have any way to deprive people of their freedom, right? We're not ceding that to any international agency ever. And this is part of why.
So, Benny Gantz, who's part of the Netanyahu coalition, has also been, he's been critical of Netanyahu. I mean, he and Netanyahu have been going back and forth. They've been fighting each other on these elections for the last few years anyway. And so he would love a chance, he would love that to be the prime minister and take over and everything like that. But apparently one of the problems he faces is that because he's been part of this coalition, is that people also tie him to Netanyahu, so that that would probably just, if he resigns and then tries to challenge, gets the parliament dissolved and tries to run for election, that he may not do very well anyway, and then Israel will have an even bigger problem. So Israel's being governed. It's kind of precarious in a way. Netanyahu, I think, is doing the best job he can, and you've got to wipe these guys out. I think I saw a story the other day where 2 or 3 more bodies were returned of some of the, the hostages, and
Yeah, they don't have any hostages. They
it
killed
just
them all.
it just breaks your heart to see that this stuff has gone on and all of this.
Yeah.
Israel has got to just go for this, and these protesters, whether or not they be on campus, whether or not they be somewhere else, um, they need to understand what they're fighting against. But when you have George
What they're
Soros,
fighting for.
yeah,
Think about what they're fighting for. They support, rampant, random killing of people that you don't know for no reason.
yeah,
Right. And cruel rapes and doing it in front of families and degrading the family. I mean, going into the heart and soul of what it means to be a Jew.
yeah.
Right. I mean,
Right, and it's not a grassroots effort, right? I mean, we've got George Soros, the Tides Foundation, I guess the Rockefeller Foundation.
yeah.
They have been funding some of these things. So you've also got these left wing protesters that have joined the whole thing, and so they're in essence, paid hacks in there, paid professional protesters that help fuel the flames of all of this. Now,
Yeah.
it may cool down here now that the semester's winding down.
I mean,
But
we'll see because, people keep telling me that and it keeps not cooling down. And part of that is, a lot of these people that are involved in this are not college students.
right.
They're not off for the summer. This is their job. This kind
Yeah.
of troublemaking.
Yeah. So
And they like the idea that Biden is stuck in this morass, right? They like that. They like that they've got him bogged down dealing with this, right? He has 2 battles he can't win. He cannot win this battle because if he backs Israel, all these guys get mad at him and the protests and the violence and the street looks terrible and all that stuff. And the immigration, right? He can't, there's calls to turn it off, but he can't turn it off because there's calls to keep it open, right? And he's, he doesn't really have any principles or ideals, so he's kind of knocked back and forth with the wind.
Yeah, I mean, I think because college campuses are relatively quiet during the summer, probably nothing much will happen there. It's hard. You don't really have the volume, there, but there is, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and what was it? Was it 1968? There was everything kind of blew up for the Democrats. It was a bad, convention for them. And so I think there's, here we are, 56 years later. It's possible. And I think that they're aware that there's a lot of things that, that could happen outside that convention, with that.
What happened there? Do you remember what happened there? So they drove LBJ out of the race, right? That's where he said, if nominated, I will not serve, right? That's where he bowed out.
Right. That's true.
Okay.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that part of this is they still want to try to get another candidate besides Biden. I think that's part of why they're having these debates so early, right? Because that way, if he does bad, if he bombs in the debate, then they can, they'll have a case to replace it on the ticket. I don't see how they do that. It's my understanding of how the state election laws work. Unless their replacement is Harris, they're going to have a lot of ballot access problems, right? So, you can give it to the vice president, but you can't really give it to anybody else. So, and she polls worse than he does. So, they're stuck with Biden. He'll be your candidate unless he dies or is seriously, disabled by then.
Yeah, I mean, we're not lawyers or election law lawyers, but it would seem that when the filing deadlines pass, it's your 1-2 candidates on there, and those are your candidates, and that's it. You can't bring in another person after the fact. So you're stuck with Biden Harris. If Biden drops out, yeah, Harris could step in and have that ballot access, but you can't just bring in Gavin Newsom or whatever, and put him at the top of the ticket or wherever on the ticket. That probably will not fly legally. So they do have a problem there with that. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there's a lot of left wingers who are not happy with Biden, and that would agitate for that. I was thinking though the other day on these debates, particularly since we have one, what was it, June 27th or something like that? I think Okay, so how many people are going to be around and going to be interested enough to really watch that? I guess some,
Oh,
but I mean,
I
it
think
is
it will be well
it,
watched.
it is. I mean, it's the summer. I mean, people will watch for Trump. I don't know. I just don't know if they would watch necessarily for Biden. I don't know. It'll be kind of. I'll be interested to see how this one turns out, just because it's kind. It's a summer thing, and people are running around the country and not in their normal places. But it may not be as well watched as one closer to to election day, but it may still be it may still be reasonably well watched. But the summertime, you get I won't be surprised if I don't kind of forget about it at some point in time. So, oh yeah, there's that debate, by the way, and all of that.
People used to say like no one paid attention till Labor Day, but like people have been paying attention to this one for a long time. The two candidates with 100% ID. We all know what's at stake. The state of the race has not moved actually very much in about the last year and a half. Right, Trump's been ahead by what he's been ahead by, and there's been a little action, a little more here, a little less there, so forth. But he's ahead, and he's ahead in the battleground states, and he's gone ahead and hidden with Georgia, Arizona. They will almost definitely flip. And he's got some others in the thing that will almost definitely flip. And there's now some in play that they didn't think would be in play, including Virginia and Minnesota. So and also you'll get to a point where there starts to be some coattails where Trump says, and I think Trump should get on this early. I don't give him a lot of advice because he has pretty good political instincts, but one thing he needs to talk about is the need to give him a Republican Congress, because if you don't, it's going to be, they're going to come up with investigations and, the same kind of garbage to drag him down that they've been done before. So, they'll always have some new outrage. Yesterday he was just trying to start a Reich or something. Remember, then the day before it was something about an upside down flag. And, it's just, faux outrage after faux outrage. And, because they got nothing else. They're behind. They're leaderless and adrift.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into a little bit of just so that the trial is now, the defense is rested. They call a couple of witnesses. Wisely, Trump did not testify because I think there's no reason for Trump to testify. Plus the fact that if you're going to testify, in your case, you need to be disciplined. That is not Donald Trump. Okay?
Well, yeah, right. You can't really control it, and once it starts, you can't stop it, right? So, I mean, that's why
it would have been
don't do it.
extremely entertaining.
Yeah, it would have been entertaining, but you're not really seeking entertainment value there either. But also the other point about it is, usually if you have a defendant testify, you're fairly desperate about the case you make. The case here is pretty obviously in Trump's favor, right? It's pretty clear that he did not know who was getting paid and what was getting paid for and all this stuff. I mean, they've managed to muck this up and make it look like, to me, it looks like they should acquit him anyway, or at least, say that the crime wasn't defined properly. The witnesses are, both proven to be liars and furious with Trump and all this kind of stuff. So, they sat and exposed multiple lies in Michael Cohen's testimony. And now, I don't know how you convict him based on Michael Cohen's testimony. So, I don't know. Everyone says that they'll get their guilty verdict. There's two lawyers on that jury. I cannot believe that they're watching all this unfold and let it happen. And it'd be a party to it. Now, it takes some courage to stand up in that room when everybody's saying, hey, we got a chance to screw Trump here, make history, and you're going to mess with our chance to make history and tell the truth and say, it doesn't look like he's guilty and we need the system to work for all of us. And so it has to work for Trump too. So it'll be interesting to see, but I'm, until I hear he's convicted, I'm not going to believe it. Cause I don't think that, I don't think they made the case. I don't think they proved it.
No, I mean, I think, it started with Stormy Daniels' testimony, but Cohen's testimony, I think, was really more damaging.
Disaster. I mean, even like the CNN guys are on TV. Oh, it didn't go well.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when the CNN guys are kind of like, oh, that was not good. You're like, okay, you know you're in trouble. Okay, it's like at that point in time, he's like, you probably should just like give up, and you should probably go to the judge and say, we're withdrawing this case.
Yeah, judge could, there's a, I think you could get a directed verdict too.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not going to be good. I mean, so they're going to have closing arguments next week, and I don't see much changing. And so yeah, and when Trump is vindicated, like you and I expect, I mean, that's going to be huge. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
it will just give him more ammunition to kind of say it's like these cases against me are nothing but political vendettas. You know,
right.
that's all it's about. It's clear that these are just attempts to bring me down, and the legal system said no. This case is just flawed, and Alvin Bragg, these guys, these are horrible individuals, for bringing these cases. But we'll have, he's got a few more after that. But I mean, Fonnie Willis won her primary, so she'll get reelected in the general, and that which means that she'll just keep pushing her own thing down there in Georgia. But I think once Trump gets by this trial, I think that changes the complexion of a lot of things going forward.
Right. You could see them saying the lawfare strategy is not working and trying to get themselves out of it somehow. Right. I don't know how they'll do it, but I can see them saying this probably wasn't the best way to do this.
All right. Rather than get into another subject, let's just close this off and go ahead, take it out, Brian.
What was left on here? I look and see. Greg Abbott. Yeah, Biden's back to releasing from the SPR. It's not really working. It's kind of gotten to the point where it doesn't do what you want it to do. It's kept it from being, big increases, bigger increases than it could, but you really can't bring it down anymore. I thought the Mercedes, that plant, I've gone past that plant millions of times. It's right on I-20 in Alabama, that Mercedes plant. And they voted to unionize the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, and just in the last few weeks, right? So, but Volkswagen, is used to dealing with unions. That's how they function in Europe, right? And so Volkswagen actually was helping them do it, But I think the move to unionize these plants, I think people realize, it will probably mean that costs get too high for the plant to operate, and that you'll get some short-term gain, but then the plant won't be profitable and it'll close. The Democrats want to push their immigration, speed them through the border bill and call it immigration reform again. I don't really understand the purpose of that. I thought that, they made that case last time and kind of lost, kind of got rejected. There's a bill. They were interested in actual immigration reform. HR 2 has been sitting up there for 2.5 years. Just take that up, right? It's already passed by the House. You pass it, then you work through conference and you get what you want. Let's see. Red Lobster. That's going to be a big story. Red Lobster went broke. It's one of those things. They used to they had Chapter 11, right, where you could kind of save those companies and keep them afloat, all those employees afloat and everything. I mean, that's a supply chain. That's a pretty exclusive supply chain that they worked very hard, right? I mean, to get enough seafood to these places all over the country, even in the interior of the country, and to ship it and keep it fresh, that's quite a logistical challenge, that they were meeting for decades, and now they haven't. I'd be interested to learn more about why that is. And what else? Harrison Butker, I believe, the Chiefs the Chiefs were going to keep him, and Andy Reid says if he goes, I go. So I think his job is safe.
All right, I got to quickly wrap up. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.